Welcome to the QualiTalks podcast. I'm Ian Kugel, your host, and my guest today is Shoab Malek. Shoab is a pharmaceutical consultant and a GMP auditor. Shoab has performed more than 100 audits during his career, and today we're going to talk about what it means to be a GMP auditor, tips for success, how to become one, the challenges, and the rewards. Hi, Shoab.
Hi, hello.
It's great to have you again on the QualiTalks podcast. The last time we had a really interesting talk about the COVID-19 and the situation in India worldwide. And today we want also to make an interesting talk, but this time to go a bit more into quality. And I think a great discussion is auditing. You
Right,
are an auditor for a long time. You did more than 100 audits across the
right,
world, and I think you're a great person to talk to about audits, how to become an auditor,
right,
the challenges, and so on. Uh, so, uh,
right.
so, how long have you been auditing?
Yeah, that I am auditing this pharmaceutical industry since last 3 years. From 2017, I have started auditing of these facilities like vendor audit or some of the client audits in the US, in the India, China, and Egypt. Because that my core area is auditing, I started my career with one production department, and after that just I got the interest to work with the documentation field, so I just moved from production to QA, and I just started working with this QA department. And in my earlier stage, I got the opportunity to face the regulatory audits of like USFDA and EU-GMP. Based on that, I learned a lot of things. I have represented so many documents to the auditor, and after these audits I just make my goal that I want to become an auditor and to do a job like an auditor.
About 3 years now, you say,
Right.
and you managed to do about more than 100 audits. So it's quite a lot of audits in such a short time.
Right, because that I have started working as a consultant since 2017, and initially that with my consulting agency, I have also do my that ongoing jobs and industrial jobs, because I got this some opportunity to work as a manager and a head of a quality. So I managed both of things, that I managed my job, I manage my own consulting task, I manage my own clients. So I have audited many of the companies on behalf of my ongoing industrial experience, and I have performed so many audits based on my own skills and from my own clients.
So, how many audits do you do per month?
Yeah, that when I started this career and I got the opportunity to audit some facilities, I have audited at 14 audits in a week.
Oh, that's amazing.
So yeah, so that I have to travel a lot. Every day I have to travel in the evening for a next task. So from morning that I will go for the audit, and evening again I have to travel for the next audit.
And how do you find time to write the reports?
That reports that I for all of my clients, I'm sending them reports after 15 to 20 days. So during weekends I will just draft this all reports and I'll send them to my client.
Mhm. So you don't rest much on the weekends.
Yeah, weekends.
Okay. And how many countries
Yeah,
have you visited?
yeah, that till time that I have audited all across the India, again then in China and in Egypt. I have audited some companies in Egypt also. So total 3 countries I have visited, that India, China, and Egypt. And for this year, that all plannings has been changed due to this pandemic COVID-19. But I got some request from my clients to audit one facility in London and one facility in US.
To the next question. Um, so, Shah, how do you find the quality difference between the countries?
That as you know, that country wise they have their own regulatory standards, that in terms of USFDA they have their CFR references for pharmaceutical industries, For MHRA, they have their own guidance. Now, after Brexit, that EU, European countries have their own guideline. It is called EU-GMP Udralex. And in India and some other countries, they are following WHO. And for Ukraine and outside countries, they have their PICs. But out of this all guidelines, I found that MHRA is a very constrained and a very I can say that it is a very strict guideline. If you are following this MHRA guideline, you will got the idea about all these guidelines, and the limitations of all these guideline is quite similar. But MHRA is having some stringent approaches to the GMP. What I found in my experience in my audits, that MHRA companies are quite strict, and they are facing and they are believing that this MHRA regulatory inspection is quite harder than USFDA.
Okay, that's interesting to know. So when you
Yeah,
travel so many countries, and as you say, each country has its own standard. How
right.
how do you study the country's guidelines, and how difficult it is to go across countries where each country determines what GMP is a bit differently, and they have a bit different quality standards?
Yeah, that before getting the audit agenda and before getting these audit requests, I will ask my clients or I will ask my vendors to provide me some documents. On behalf of that, I will prepare my audit requirements. I will send them my pre-requisition to my clients. So based on that, I can understand what actually they are following and what is their regular practices. So based on that, I will prepare my audit agenda and I will send them to my clients.
Mhm. So, where would you say that India is right now in regard to quality in the pharmaceutical manufacturing in the comparison to the rest of the world?
That India, as you know, that as you've seen that the many of the Indian companies have their USFDA, WHO, MHRA, and EU-GMP, all these regulatory inspections and all this approval. Many of the known pharma giants and many of the small organizations, those who are working with their export business to European and US and UK region, they have their a very stringent quality parameters because they must have to follow this regulatory or inspection regulatory guidelines for their routine production.
Mhm.
Because as some regulatory bodies have started inspecting these facilities on very frequent basis, they must have to follow this regulatory requirement on their manufacturing sites.
Standards right now. But I know that there is a lot of drop shippings across the world. So do you find that there are still companies that need to do a bit more to stay current with the regulations?
Yeah, of course. That I will share. I share my personal experience that during my these 100+ audits, I have rejected many sites in India. I have rejected many sites in India after completion of audit. Even though some of the audits I don't know the exact numbers or around 10 to 12 sites, I have closed my audits after 2 hours or 3 hours because they do not have their required standards at their manufacturing sites. They do not have well developed documentation systems. Even I found some data integrity or some found cleaning issues. So I just close these audits after 2 3 hours and I have sent them a report or I have sent them updates to my clients that this manufacturer is not very well with quality of product. So even that India is has to work hard. Indian companies, some of the Indian companies, those who are working for some domestic business or some rest of the world countries, they have to focus on quality more because they have the standards of WHO and they are following these standards. But as no one is there to inspect them from regulatory sides, so they are not well with quality. They have to focus more.
Okay, it's great that the companies are on the way, and I think although some companies need to do some extra work in India to
Right.
achieve the good quality. I still think that many of them have really great works and really a great site, because as we have
Sites.
learned during the COVID-19 that how
Right.
important India is in the global supply.
Global suppliers. Yes, of course.
Mhm. So tell me, please, do you have some interesting stories from your audits? So you did so many. Do you have some audit that you remember until now, and maybe it was very interesting or shocking, or some?
Yeah, that
Mm.
some of the audits from my initial stage, that I have audited one FDA, USFDA inspected facility in India. That during this audit, I was the alone and I was the lead auditor for this CGMP audit, and I have audited that facility for 2 days. But after my starting meeting and opening meeting, I just found that my total experience was around 6 years, and that auditee is having experience of my age. They have the experience of 26 years or 28 years in pharmaceutical industry. So first thing that I thought, that how can I face them and how can I answer them, because they are the most seniors with me. Because I am as an auditor, they called me the sir, that you, because they give me the respect. They give the respect to each and every auditor. They give me a good opening presentation, they just welcome, they give me a bouquet. But this was the experience that I have seen, that these auditee guys or audit facing guys are more than my age experience. So it is a quite amazing experience to face them and to give them advice or to give them updates on the regulatory guidelines and regulatory updates, and to share my knowledge with them. They appreciate my knowledge and they appreciate my auditing skills at the end of audit. But it was amazing experience to face such type of higher experienced people during my audits.
So, what would be your advice for people who are just starting as auditors, lead auditors? How should they convey themselves during audits where they face people that are much more experienced there than they are, and they feel lower in the hierarchy?
Yeah, it's based on the hierarchy, that in India, that many of the auditors you find that in the age of like 50 or above. But I started my auditing during age of 26. So I just face this lot of issues. It is not an issues, but I just face that the auditee or this audit representative people from company is having more than my experience. They are the most seniors for me. But as an auditor, I have I have done my job. I have audited their facilities based on the requirement of clients. I have audited all the CGMP regulations. I have shared with my knowledge with them. But I found during my experience that many of these senior peoples in India, those who have started their careers in 90s, they are on their top level. They have good package and all. They have good experience as all, but they have some knowledge in their limitations. They have not explored their knowledge with this updation of guidelines, updation of their regulations. In this current changes, they were not updated. So my basic and my general feedback after each and every audit to the manufacturing site is,
Mhm.
just update your knowledge with regulatory requirements, to update your candidates and to update your colleagues with trainings, to impart more and more trainings, to give them a more and more regulatory references to read them. And you just update yourself and update this company with regulatory requirements on daily basis, because many people is having their own standards, their working style is different, but they were not updated with regular updates of guidelines and
World,
regulations.
across the world, for example, Egypt, China, is there a
Yeah,
big cultural difference
yeah, that
that you
in
need to be aware
Egypt I
of?
found that companies and peoples are very much positive. In Egypt, I found that companies and their practices and their knowledge about their GMPs and their regular operation is quite good. They have good knowledge with their practices. They have good knowledge of these regulatory guidelines. They were aware, and they have some dedicated task, and their team power is more. I found that Egypt is in very controlled manner for this pharmaceutical industries. But in China, I found the worst condition for
So
pharmaceutical companies.
in
Worst,
China
yes.
is the
So
worst
many of
conditions.
these small companies, like those who are producing APIs and excipients in Hubei or Shanghai province, so they have their manufacturing sites in a very worst condition, even though they have not followed the basic GMP requirements. I have rejected them during my audits, but I found the very worst case and very worst condition in this China inspection.
Okay, yeah. So it sounds so auditing sounds really interesting, but also quite challenging. So what are the biggest challenges
Yeah,
in
that
being an
biggest
auditor?
challenge as an auditor is when you found the non-compliance in a serious manner. In any of the reputed organization or small organization, when you found data integrity issues or any critical issues, so at that time the reaction of the people, manufacturing side people, is not quite good. Many of the organizations are trying to defend their conditions, are trying to explain those conditions, how it happened. They say that it is a silly mistake, it is done by me. Just even though my worst experience for this auditing is that many of the companies are offering money to change the audit report. So it is a quite a very bad experience what I.
Companies offer money. Is it a common practice, and in which countries have you encountered such a behavior?
It's not common practice. I found this money in money offering sites in India, in many regions, that companies, small companies, mainly that KSM, key starting materials and API manufacturing companies, those who are offering monies after completion of audit, they contact me. They just ask me to change the reports, we will fulfill your requirements and all. So it is a quite bad experience and embarrassing moment when you're working as a good quality auditor.
You overcome such situations that companies try really to
So
defend their systems, but they they are not qualified for a high GMP standard.
So the my simple funda is to defend them is I will show them a regular guideline, regulatory guideline. I will show them a reference in my laptop. See what requirement is says and what you are following. It is the simple. It is a simple gap between your practice and GMP practice. So I will raise a observation as a major, minor, or depend on the category, and I will send them an actual audit report what I have seen during my inspection.
So it's a good point that as an auditor, you really need to know really well the regulations, and you need to know where to find them in order to justify
Yeah,
your findings.
yeah. You just have to know the all CFR references if you are going for the inspection of USFDA inspected sites. So you have to aware with all CFR references of 211 part. You have to give them all subpart references and their CFR references for their practices when they are come for defend themselves. So as an auditor, their knowledge and the skill is most required. They must have to update their knowledge. Auditor have to read on daily basis. They have to update their self with regulatory requirements. And during audit, they have to remain calm, and they have to remain positive, and they have to show them a actual gap assessment and actual practices. They have to realize their manufacturers on their actual practices against GMP practices.
Mhm. How long do you spend monthly or weekly on studying new regulations and reviewing the regulations?
Yeah, that my I am daily expending 2 to 3 hours for reading
Mm.
that regulatory updates on CFR, for MHRA, for EU regulations, or even the WHO regulations. And during this pandemic, I got the best time to read these all guidelines and to upgrade my knowledge.
What are your best sources? You go directly to the regulations, or you also read articles, magazines, and some other
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah, that I'll read the magazines and articles as well. But my best practice is to review their own websites. Means CFR is having their own websites of access data, that MHRA is having their websites. So I will visit their websites once in a day. If I found any amendment or any draft policy, I just go through it, and I will update my knowledge and I will upgrade myself.
Yeah. And that's what also allowed you to become quite quickly a lead auditor at a younger age because you were interested in the regulations.
Right.
Is
That
that the
my
reason?
hard work, yeah, my hard work and my knowledge and my skill, that just because of this, that I got this opportunity to work as a lead auditor with many of the organizations.
Mhm.
And I have audited many of the companies as a lead auditor or as a single auditor alone for 2 days or 3 days.
Mhm. So you said that um, when you have resistance from companies, you go and show them the regulations. Now,
Right.
sometimes regulations can be interpreted in various ways. So, and
Mhm.
we know the GMP can be interpreted differently, and some countries also do it a bit differently. So, did you ever encounter such situations when you showed people the regulations, but they still didn't agree with you?
Yeah, that many times I found that they defend their practice is best and their practice is better than GMP. But my answers to such question is that I am here to audit your facility based on your GMP practice, not based on your practice. So what GMP says, that I will allow, what GMP not says, I will not allow. So you just start to work on GMP and you just improve yourself, because GMP says that to follow a minimum requirement with GMP regulations, so they must have to follow.
Mhm. Yep, good answer. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that's a good answer. And so tell me, what do you love most about being an auditor? It's a challenging job, but if you do it, you must love it. So what do
Yeah,
you love most about it?
that most love about being an auditor is respect. You will get the huge respect from these manufacturers or many of these organizations. When I go for audit, that they will respect, they will give me a bouquet. The opening ceremony was there, and after audit some plantation was there, some closing ceremony was there. They will just give me a respect. They heard me very sincerely, and they will start to approach me after these audits, and they will implement my ideas. So it is a lovable moment, so that when people follow you and when people start to heard you about your skills and knowledges.
Mhm. It's probably also really cool that you help other companies do some changes that benefit their
Changes.
organizations.
Right.
Because I know that as an auditor, many people dislike that you come to them, and we know it
Yeah.
in internal audits and also external audits. There is some negativity towards auditors
Negativity.
and towards an audit because people think that you are there to judge them.
Right. That many of the after my many of the audit experience, I found that in India and in China, many of the manufacturers QA people or many of the manufacturers production and QC people are not having that much of confidence to face the audit. Even though as an auditor, when I ask them some questions, they are unable to answer. I have asked them a simple questions about their routine practices, but they were just uh, not able to answer, they do not have that much of confidence to face the audit. So that is the reason behind their this uh, candidates, that they do not have that much of confidence.
So, in your point of view, what should companies do to prepare better for audits?
Yeah, for that, that company has to impart a training. They have to give a lot of trainings to their colleagues, and they have give a lot of trainings to their senior staff, at least their senior staff or their audit representative staff, to ask them to speak English as well, to ask them to speak some regulatory requirements, or to ask them to give answers based on your routine practices. So they have to implement their trainings. They are able to answer in their local languages, but even though some of the candidates are not able to answer in local languages as well, they are just afraid.
Yeah. So, I think it's a common practice to have a translator, somebody who
Yes.
knows both the languages, because
Yeah.
I know that if you don't speak the language, it really can cause, because
Problem. Understanding is
misunderstanding
there.
is a bit thin. It's a
Right.
really a bit thin when you're not prepared and you say things that you shouldn't say. And I also believe that as an auditor, you should come there also to help the company improve. And I think that also the company should understand that when auditors come, they should look at it as a gift. They should look at it as a consultant that comes and helps
Right.
them improve their facilities, improve their process, and for
Right.
free,
Right.
actually.
That many of the companies I have seen, that those who are working hard, or those who have really a guts to become a best GMP practitioner in the India. So during my 2 days or 3 days audit, when I give them a observation on the first day, at the end of day, so they just give me a immediate response on the second day. See, sir, that we have implemented this. We have taken these corrective actions on an immediate basis. We have revised so and so documents. We have implemented this new policy. We have implemented these new documents. So some of the organization I have seen that this proactive approach, and they are very much interested to learn more and more things. So they are happy. Actually, when we will go for such type of audits for such companies, those who are ready to accept these observations, to accept these non-conformities, or to accept this gap assessment, we love to audit such type of facilities, because you will get the immediate response from that. They are also ready to learn new things. They will ask for some more improvements, some more suggestions. They will show them their own practice, and they will ask them what is our gap, what we have to follow, what is the regulatory requirements. So such type of audits, it's quite good for us
Good.
as
So
an
that's
auditor.
a great message also for companies that receive the auditors, how they should receive them, and they
Right.
should them with respect, and also take advantage of their knowledge
Right.
in the companies. But because I think also as an auditor, you get to audit a lot of companies. As you said, you did more than 100 audits.
Right.
It means that you gained a lot of new experiences, because each company has some different quality system. They have some different standard procedures, and each
Right.
company also helps you grow as an auditor.
Right.
And it means that also as a consultant you bring those you bring this valuable knowledge to other companies, also when you audit them and also when you do consulting. What do you think
Right.
about it?
Yeah, right. That it is based to learn about this from these audits, and I will get this some good experience, and I will even some from some organization I got this so good practices as well. I learned the best GMP practices from them. I have shown them their documentation system is quite impressive. They have small documentation, but it covers all these requirements. They have a small or a very limited forms with limited pages information, limited pages SOPs, but it contains all this information about GMP. It contains all minimum requirements. So I learned many things. I have seen such protocols. It is a very small or quite interesting protocol which contains all this information about their task.
So Shoab, who do you think should consider becoming an auditor?
That as per my experience, everybody has chance to become an auditor, even though he is or she is from production, QC or regulatory department. He or she has to chance to become an auditor. But to become an auditor, the thing required is that he or she must has experience of all these QMS procedures, QA procedures, and all the facility operations they must have to go through. So best option to become an auditor for other than QA department is, as I have mentioned in my article, that they have to switch their job into QA either in their same organization or in some other organization. And after switching this their job into QA, he will get the more focus and more idea about the whole plant operation procedures, as QA is the master documents contains QA contains all these master documents, and QA is the boss of this pharmaceutical industries, those who have all this documentation in their hand. So after getting the opportunity to work in QA, he or she has to started learning so many things. He has start to focus and he has to spend time after behind this reading and all. And after that, they can start to perform internal audits. And after internal audit, they will get the chance to perform a vendor audit from company side. So it will be the best option to learn new things after performing with performance of these vendor audits of raw materials and packaging materials. And based on their experience or based on their skills, they can start to work as an independent auditor. But for QA people, they have a very good platform. Those who are working in QA, they have a very good platform. They can improve themselves. They can improve their knowledge with reading, with training, with attending more and more webinars and training sessions. And after this, the minimum requirement to become an auditor is 5 years. After 5 years of experience, they can apply as an auditor certification program at many organization bodies like ASQ, American Society for Quality, or they can apply for a NSF. NSF is also conducting such type of programs. Some other regulatory bodies or some other organizations like that IRCA is there in India, SGS is there. So such type of organization bodies are conducting such programs for trainings, certification of auditor program trainings. So they can attain these training programs, they can learn many auditing skills and auditing practices, and after that they can start work as an auditor.
So, from your point of view, what are the most important soft skills that people need to have in order to become a good auditor?
The most important soft skill is that they have to remain calm and they have to become a positive, and they have their skills and knowledges at the top level. So most important things what I have said as my experience, when you face a higher experienced people in auditing, you just have to defend them and you just have to convince them with their routine practices with gap of GMP practices. So the best skill is required is like a confidence and positivity.
So, can you develop it?
Yeah.
What exercises do you suggest for people to develop more confidence during audits and in general?
Yeah, for industry people, I will suggest them to give up themselves as a trainer, to start give a training in their institutes or in their organization or in their manufacturing sites, to become a trainer and to start give a training to more than 20 peoples or 30 peoples, to start give them a training to their skills people, to their unskilled people. With this training, he will face some questions. He or she will face some many of the questions, and after giving these questions answer, he will develop their confidence.
Perfect. So thank you for this tip, and I think that
Yeah,
many would find it helpful. And
right.
and let's say the people did what you suggested. So as you said, you can start in the pharmaceutical industry in any department, but in order to become an auditor, you really need to move to the QA. So you can help,
Yes.
do internal audits also in other departments. It depends on the company, but usually you can,
Companies.
because
Yeah, as a cross-functional, yes, as a cross-functional team, they can start perform audit. But I suggest this QA department just because from QA, when they moved or when they switched their job to QA, they get the exact idea about the routine practices and the whole manufacturing site operations, which includes warehouse department, production department, QC department, engineering department, and all.
So let's say somebody followed your advice, he became a junior auditor. What tips can you give for such a person at the beginning of his career as a young auditor?
Yeah, so I will suggest them, I will give them a just a good idea is that just develop themselves to upgrade their knowledge with reading, to work hard and hard, initiate us, develop a skill of new learn, start a group discussion with their peoples, to start a discussion with their seniors and to learn their new things from their seniors, to respect their seniors and to respect their head of the departments and colleagues and all. Just discuss these GMP practices with their colleagues, to attend more and more GMP trainings in their own organization or in their online training programs. And after that, this once they grew up with their skills, they are ready to perform audit anywhere.
Perfect. And what are the biggest mistakes that new auditors commonly do?
Yeah, that I have performed many audits with my colleagues and with new auditors also, that I have seen that the lack of confidence, that many of the new auditors were not understand the GMP practices and current practices as well. So they will just discuss with their manufacturing sites people. So it is not a worthful discussion, because the reason is that he or she may be a new auditor, he or she is not clear with his or her skills in the GMP practices. So better is that when you grew up your knowledge and when you get your all this complete knowledge about guideline references, you just start to perform audits. Before that, you don't go for these vendor audits and all, because you will get the more challenges from opposite sides also, because they are also following GMP, they know their GMP, they know their area and manufacturing sites since long. Because the reason is that auditor is going to audit for one day, but their QA people are spending time at this manufacturing site since long, from 1 year, 2 year, 10 years. So they well known about their practices, and they well known about their production sites and all. So even a single day, during this single day audit, you may not be a good person to find a gap, but just start to follow just start to review their documents with GMP practices, to start the documents review with regulatory requirements, and after that you just conclude, you just discuss with them also, and based on the conversation you just conclude it is a gap, really it is a gap or not.
So, Shoab, thank you very much for this great
Yes.
overview about being an auditor and how to become one. It was a pleasure. And I will also leave a link to your article on this topic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Qualitox podcast. If you like the episode, consider subscribing so you won't miss new episodes. Stay compliant and see you in the next one.